on this chart, but which ones do we want to see, go over, have questions about? 4, 3.
Yeah.
Any others? Okay, let's start with 3.
2.
Sure. Let's start with 2 then. Great, so 2, you had to find the slope. Did you find the video?
Yeah, I found it. Nope.
You have to show it to all of us.
No, sorry.
Or email it to on the board.
If it's something I can play, like I can't play certain videos, so it depends. So you have to use this formula, your slope formula, and put each of these in this. Awesome. Can you all see in the dark like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, my eyes hurt today, so I'll look at my phone. This table over here, I need you to not talk while I'm talking to. Thank you. Put all the numbers in. Subtract them. 0 over -7 would be 0. So that should be the answer to m equals 0. Yes.
Like skip all that.
You could have also said these are the same. They're going to cancel each other out. So it would have to be n equals 0. Wait, 3 is not something we have done in this class, but you have done or should have done in algebra. Exponent rule, so you are dividing like bases, which means you are subtracting the exponents and actually dividing these numbers.
So, wouldn't it be 1, 9? Oh, yeah.
Yes. Subtract 9 and 4, subtract 3 and 7. But you can't have negative exponents in your final answer, so we have to change this. I call this mathematic. Take this and you flip it. And it goes in the denominator with a positive exponent. But then everything needs to be combined into one fraction. So this would be c to the 5th all over 9b to the 4th. Would be your final answer. Questions on that one? Four was combining like terms. You would distribute first. There's a 1 behind here. Bring down the 3x. So 3x plus 10x minus 12 minus x minus 2. And then combine all of your x's together and all of your constants together. So this would be 13 minus 1 would give us 12. This would give us minus 14. So that would be your final answer. Questions on that one? Before we get into the notes today, wanted to remind you, if you've not taken / finished your Unit 8 test, you have until the morning of the 22nd, because that's when we're taking our next test. Otherwise, it'll be graded as is. All retakes for everyone that is not a senior the last day for retakes, missing work, any of that will be June 8th. That will be here quicker than we know it.
And what is it? We leave school when's our last day? Well,
Last day of class or last day of finals.
We have finals longer.
Correct. So if you have finals, let's say you have them for all your classes, the last day is the 15th.
Okay.
Because first period is last. But if you don't have finals at all, I think it's the 12th. It might be the 9th. It's one of those two days.
Okay.
Other questions about that? Okay. Keep those dates in mind. I'll put them on announcements and things like that. Today we're doing our 4th review lesson. We only have 2 more after this. On compound inequalities, I'm going to let you write this down first.
Is this new or have we relearned?
We already learned this.
When do we learn our last unit? Like the.
Say that one more time.
When do we learn the last unit of new information?
Oh, the last bit of new information. Like when are we? So after we test Unit 9, there'll be 2 days of new information. Then everything else will be review.
Is it graded?
Well, yes, there's one Khan Academy associated with that. So yes, in that sense, no, in other sense, we're not testing on it besides on the finals.
So,
Okay.
So compound inequalities are 2 inequalities or more, but we're just dealing with 2 that are joined together with and or. Or inequalities have a tendency to graph apart. If this was your final answer, you would graph them both. They would not be touching each other. First one with a closed circle because it's equal to. Second one with an open circle because it's not. You won't need to know the interval notation, but it's good to keep this in mind. Good practice. Sicky, Nicole, make sure you're writing this down. Make sure you're writing this down. Once you've finished writing that down, look at the numbers, examples on that page, 1 through I think it's 5. Might be 6, I don't remember. Find any you want to see, do, go over, review. 3. Which one? Say it louder. 1. Okay. 1, 3.
How about 5?
Okay. 1, 3, 5.
Wait, just on the first page, right?
Just on the first. We'll talk about the second page in a second. I have a couple of people still writing stuff down. So 1, 3, and 5. Starting with 1, you have 2 separate inequalities. You solve them just like you would a multi-step equation, except it's not an equation, it's an inequality. We can't put equals in them. But we solve them separately. What you do to one, do not do to the other. Goal is still to get x by itself. So we would add 4 to this one. And that's it. For the other one, we would divide by 2.
Doesn't, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly as well, you divide this in this switch.
Only when you're dividing or multiplying by a negative.
Okay.
So like if I divided by -2 on both sides, then the side would change. But in this case, it was positive, so it's fine. Put an or in between your 2 answers, and then you can graph them. This one is strictly less than, so that's going to be open at -3. Going to the left is everything below or less than -3. 6 would have a closed circle. Going to the right. And then if we wanted to write the interval notation, which again is not necessary, but good practice. Reading left to right, it would start at -infinity, end at -3. It's open, so parentheses. Or start at positive 6, it's closed, so bracket, and end at infinity. What questions do we have on that one? Okay, so let's do 3. If we're solving this one on the left, what would we do first? That's 9 on both sides, yes. Let's just solve this one, finish it, and then we'll go back and solve the other one. So then we could divide both sides by 2. On the other side, basically same thing, we're subtracting 10. You get 0, but you can keep going. That doesn't mean you stop. And you can either put the or in as is, or if you want it to go left to right, lowest to highest, you can rearrange it. Either or does not matter. And then when we go to graph these, will these be open or closed?
Open.
At 0 and 4 going in opposite directions. If we wrote it as interval notation, it would start at negative infinity, end at 0, parentheses, start again at 4, parentheses, end at infinity. So all parentheses for that example. The bracket. Or at least one of them, not the infinity. Other questions on 3? For 5, the inequality on the left. Sure. There are multiple ways to start that, but how do you think we would start it? Okay. Because we didn't multiply both sides with a negative, we are not changing the sign yet. So add 3 to both sides. And then when you go to divide both sides by negative 6, that's when your sign will change. And just change directions, not change from less than to less than or equal to. Oh, we start the other one? You could do that. There are multiple ways to do this one as well. So let's say we add x. If that's not what you were thinking, you can still go with what you were thinking. And then what?
What is it? Minus 5. And divide by
So that's the answer. If you want to leave it like that, you can. Or if you want to rearrange it so that the x comes first. Whatever direction it's pointing to or away from the x, just make sure it's the same when you flip it. Right now it's pointing towards the x, so point it towards the x when you flip it. Graph those two. So close at negative 4, going to the left, open at 2, I didn't write the interval. Starts at negative infinity, ends at negative 4. That would be a bracket. Pretty close. Then it would start again at 2 and go to infinity. Any other questions on this page or questions about 5? If not, go on to the next one. Go ahead and write this. So the biggest thing with these is making sure you know the differences and that they're opposites. So or inequalities graph apart and inequalities graph together. If this were the final answer, both points would be closed and there would be a line in between them. Because what really happened was there was a point here and it kept going to the right. And there was a point here and it kept going to the left. And you're looking for where they overlap. So that would be that line segment. The interval notation, these are both closed, so both brackets, ending points. And because it falls between two endpoints, they usually write this in a more condensed way. Start with the lowest, end with the highest, less than or equal to, depending on the signs, X in the middle. That part should look familiar from when we were doing domain and range and notation. Once you have that written down, look at the questions on that page, see which ones you want to see, do go over, have questions about.
None.
Okay. Nine. 9 and 10. And 8. We have 8, 9, and 10. Anyone still writing this? Starting with 8, we're now solving everything at the same time. So what we do to one piece, we do everywhere. Still going to get x by itself, but we would add 4 on all sides. And divide by 3 to everything. So you have 2 closed circles at -4 and at 2. There's a line in between them. Interval notation for that, they're both closed, so both brackets starting at -4, ending at 2. What questions do we have on that one? Okay. 9 is going to be solved similarly. How would we start that one?
Subtract 1.
Everywhere. And then,
We're gonna multiply by the reciprocal.
so you can do this in 1 or 2 steps. one step would be take this, split this, multiply everything by it. Two steps would be multiply everything by 3, and then divide everything by 2 in 2 separate steps. Either or doesn't matter. Figure out what those two numbers would be.
-3
And
6.
so one of these would be open, one would be closed. With a line between them. So if you were to write the interval notation, parentheses at -3, bracket at 6. What questions do we have on that? There are multiple ways to do 10, but how do you think we should do 10? Okay. So then it's like any other problem you just did. Add 12. And divide everything by 2. So when you graph it and write the interval notation, it'll look the same as the first one, as the one we just did. Questions on that? Look at the last page. Find any you want to see, do, go over, review.
How about 10?
Anyone still need this? Four. Okay, so let's start at 3. We know this is an OR because it says OR, so it means you're solving them separately. What would we do first here?
-9.
And you could do that or add 2x, whichever one you want. Divide both sides, and what's going to happen to the sign?
It's going to switch.
That's a negative. And then solving the other one, what would we do first? Subtract 13 on both sides. And then
Reciprocal.
multiply by the reciprocal, which would be 2. So we have x is less than 4, open circle, going to the left. And then x is greater than or equal to 7, closed circle, going to the right. And that interval notation, reading left to right, is going to go to negative infinity. or, it's open, so parentheses. Then start again at 7. It's closed, so bracket. Questions on that one? Or is another or. Solve each one separately. So this one, subtract 2. Divide both sides by 5. How do we start the other one?
Plus 7.
At 7. Divide both sides by -1. Sign changes. So we have open circle at -5, going to the left. Closed circle at 7, going to the right. So then interval notation will look kind of the same as this one. Start at -infinity, end at -5, parentheses. Then start at 7, bracket, go to infinity. What questions do we have on that? And then once you're finished writing, look at 10 and tell me what type of inequality that is, and or. And. Because you don't see the word or, but also it's all condensed into one equation. So what do you want to do first? Okay. There are multiple ways to do this one. So tell me what those two numbers will be.
We're going to do 5x.
Minus
9. Then we add 9.
Yeah, add 9. Sorry. And divide both sides by 5. All 5 sides.
Is only the -31 switch?
Nothing's going to switch because we're not dividing by a negative.
Oh.
But if it was -5 in the middle, then all the signs would switch, but then you would switch it all again because it has to be less than and then least to greatest. So that interval notation would go to brackets starting at -6, ending at 5. What questions do we have on that one, or any other questions on that page? If not, for the remainder of the class, you can use it to practice these, go back and do Khan Academy, Unit 8, or the ones on the board. If you're doing the compound inequalities from past, remember that or is you're reading left to right completely. They may overlap, they may not, it depends, but read it left to right completely. And is still overlapping. I would draw a number line. So so that when you do those, you can see it. So Khan Academy practice. If you need to finish a test or work on retake stuff, you can come see me to get that. Use the time wisely.